During my year of study in Jerusalem, I attended classes on Thursday nights taught by Rav Steinsaltz, the great Talmud scholar of his generation. One night, Rav Steinsaltz read a passage of Hasidic text that mentioned the Lamed Vav, the 36 righteous people who walk the earth at any given time. He stopped teaching and looked up and said almost in passing that if anybody in the class wanted a topic for an area of study for a doctorate, they should study the tradition, the origin of the idea of the Lamed Vav, the 36 righteous people who walk the earth. And then he simply went on teaching. I often think about these 36 people who live their lives doing good deeds without the knowledge of their heavenly celebrity status, not cognizant of the light they draw into the world. I still don't know the source of the tradition, or how to even begin to ascertain how one might determine who these people are. But I am sure that we lost one of them this week. Rebbetzin Esther Jungreis died this past Tuesday at the age of 80 years old. Born into a dynasty of Hungarian rabbis, she was a Holocaust survivor who founded Hineni, a worldwide kiruv movement interested in bringing Jews closer to the Jewish tradition. She authored several well-known books, including The Jewish Soul on Fire, The Committed Life, The Committed Marriage, and most recently, Life is a Test. I first met the Rebbetzin Jungreis roughly 10 years ago after Blair and I were first married. With the encouragement of my parents, we attended a class at Hineni in New York and listened to her speak about Psalm 27, which the Jewish tradition holds we will start reciting daily in Elul through the high holidays and until Hoshana Rabbah. In the class, she encouraged couples to pray together, to recite Psalm 27 together before bedtime. She discussed how the concept of Jewish husband and wife must not end after the chuppah, but rather Jewish couples must continue to stand before God throughout the entire marriage. The couple has to remain committed to one another and committed to God, to include goodliness, godliness in their lives always. After the class, we waited in a long line filled with singles wanting a shidduch, a match, and couples wanting a blessing for all sorts of reasons. We approached her as a couple. She was petite, and every feature about her was distinct and fine and dignified, from her penetrating eyes to her warm smile. She blessed us to have beautiful children. I can't help but think about her when we tuck our kids in at night. She was a Jewish leader who spoke out against assimilation, against the epidemic of intermarriage that has swept across the Jewish people here in America. She exemplified for me what it meant to be there for the Jewish community. Kol Yisrael Aravin Ze Lazeh. All Jews are responsible for one another. She lived out this principle every day. In 2006, as the war between Israel and Hezbollah raged on, and terrorist rockets rained down all over northern Israel, Rebbetzin Jungreis landed in Israel. Hineni had purchased a building in Jerusalem and created a synagogue there. The war was raging, and the Rebbetzin gave the simplest order: open the doors and welcome every Jew that needs help. Families from the north were invited to stay in Jerusalem for as long as they needed, and Hineni housed and fed more than 250 Jews. Israeli Jews who had never seen Kabbalat Shabbat before welcomed Shabbat with the Rebbetzin. She wrote the following for the Hineni website, and I quote, "When we arrived at the center, an amazing sight greeted us. Jews of all persuasions from every part of the world, secular, religious, Haredi, young, old, babies, and small children, all seated around magnificent Shabbos tables awaiting our arrival. Together, we sang Shalom Aleichem." End of quote. Those people didn't realize it, but she was the Shabbat angel that they were welcoming. In 2008, President George W. Bush invited Rebbetzin Jungreis as part of the Jewish delegation to accompany his trip to Israel to celebrate the Jewish state's 60th birthday. It was during this trip that President Bush became only the second sitting president to visit Yad Vashem, and in a now famous moment, after looking at aerial photos of the railroads leading to Auschwitz, he became the first president ever to say that America should have bombed those tracks. On the return trip from Israel, another member of the delegation asked Rebbetzin Jungreis if she knew where they were. Yes, she replied, on a presidential plane, flying back from Israel. The other delegate pointed out that at that very moment, Germany was beneath them. Imagine, she, a survivor of a Nazi death camp, was flying from Jerusalem to New York over Germany on a U.S. presidential plane. These were the miraculous moments she lived in her life. She'll continue to live miraculous moments when Blair and I begin reciting Psalm 27 together soon again. Her memory will live on for countless married couples set up by her organization. Her memory will live on when Israeli children remember the generosity and the decency all Jews can show for one another at all times. Petite in physical appearance, she was in fact a spiritual giant. We can all learn from her goodness, from the responsibility she felt toward our Jewish family everywhere. The world is a better place because Rebbetzin Jungreis walked the earth. She was a treasure for the Jewish people, and her visionary leadership will be sorely missed. May Rebbetzin Jungreis' memory be a blessing, and may God comfort her family and all who loved her amongst the rest of the mourners of Zion and Jerusalem. And let us say, Amen.